Really, I'm surprised Apple took so long to to get into the game of doing this. Patreon's been doing this for several years now. A lot of RSS feeds have been allowing creators to charge a monthly fee or an annual fee to access gated content, and that's essentially what Apple has chosen to do. So, as of May, so right now, if you're watching this, you should have the option to opt into the Apple subscription program. It's brand new, but the question is, should we do it? That's kind of the thing that's kind of going around, and that's the question circulating in a lot of the podcast groups that I'm in. And my answer is sure. You can jump in. It's not a exclusive thing by any means. So if you're already on a Patreon, if you do a closed content stream through any other platform, you can still run that in addition to Apple subscriptions. But whether or not you want to add it to your toolbox, I guess, is up to you. And I'm going to kind of break down some of the things that I like, some of the things I dislike, some of the question marks that are raised from this, and kind of break it down really quick for you guys before you get into the meet and greet. The first thing, just what is it? Essentially, Apple subscriptions is a paywall to gated content. So it could be extra episodes, it could be ad-free episodes, it could be early or exclusive access to some of the new episodes that you're releasing. It is up to you what benefit you want to include, but it's all based on episodes. That's the only perk that you can offer right now, is either early access or exclusive access to your content. The really cool thing is Apple has a huge base of listeners. So Apple Podcasts is available to listeners all over the world, and Apple subscriptions is available in 170 countries and regions. So there's not a small amount of people that are able to sign up. The numbers of it are pretty crazy. Like I said, the 170 countries and regions, and then the pricing itself is pretty cool. So pricing for subscriptions is set by you as a creator. So you can choose to make it, $5, $10, $20, whatever you want to charge for that exclusive content. And it's billed monthly by default. So people that sign up are going to be charged each month through their Apple subscription settings, just like any other subscription. And they can choose to pay monthly, or if you want to set up annual, you can do that as well. And they can set it up through there. For those that are doing some kind of gated content, you can also do free trials. You can do sample episodes. For anybody in here who does narrative content or fictional work that kind of has an arc to it, where it's got a episode 1, episode 2, it has to be in order. I've seen a lot of creators doing like a single episode as a sample, and then they can purchase essentially the rest of the season. So that's an option there. Now, with the subscriptions, the way that works for listeners is if they have family sharing, they can break it down to their entire family, so up to 6 people. So if I subscribe to a podcast, anyone who's through my family sharing settings on my phone will also have access to those exclusive subscriptions, which is a great thing for listeners, but it does cut down, the chance of having, 3 or 4 people in a family subscribing to your show that way. And then also Apple Podcasts, which I won't go into a ton right now, they've redesigned their podcast application as well. So if you go into it with your new iOS update, you're going to see a lot of updates and changes there that make it a lot easier to use. Better search tab. They have top charts and categories are a little bit better sorted. And they have like a smart play button, so it chooses based on the order the creator sets. It's pretty cool. They've done a lot of good work, and it's about time, honestly, because Apple Podcasts hasn't done a lot of crazy updates up to this point. Now, I'll get into some of the kind of cons, the pros and cons when comparing to a site like Patreon. Those of you that have heard me talk before know that I love Patreon. It's been a huge help for me. I do subscriptions through Patreon, and I run some through PayPal. And Patreon's definitely dialed in. They've been doing it for a long time. So the way that Apple Podcasts kind of breaks down compared to Patreon, the biggest thing that jumped out to me when this was launched was Apple is charging creators to offer subscriptions. So any content creators that want to use this program are going to pay $19.99 a year in order to be able to offer this feature. So if you're charging $10 a subscription, you're going to need 2 subscribers to cover the cost of the program. I'm pretty sure I did the math right. Joanna can shake her head or if I did that wrong, but pretty simple math. If you're going to be doing, $10 a month, you're going to need 2 subscribers just to break even on the platform. So there is a pay to play as opposed to a Patreon or most of these other sites where it's free to join. They take a percentage. Now, on top of the paying the $19.99 a year, Apple's also taking 30% of your revenue in the first year of a subscriber's lifetime. So if someone jumps on, and they're only on for a year, you're losing 30% of your revenue to Apple. And then any other years that they stay on, they're going to take 15% of that as their transaction fee. Again, compared to Patreon takes 12%. So if you're questioning either or, I would say Patreon definitely wins in that category. There's no cost to it, and it's 3% more in your pocket than Apple. But again, you have to do that balancing act of, okay, the amount of listeners I can get native to Apple versus taking someone to a third-party platform. So it's cost of doing business, essentially. The other thing that might be a little bit of a con when it comes to just workflow is you can't edit your Apple Podcast subscription through your RSS feed. Everything that you do through Apple Podcast is going to go through a separate upload process in Apple's own backend. So you're going to be logging into Podcast Connect. You're going to be uploading it to your exclusive feed for your listener, and you have to do it all through them. So it will be an extra step, extra show notes, extra editing, things like that to create the content on top of just recording extra episodes for your subscribers. So it's a little bit of extra work, but this is not an Apple Podcast exclusive problem. Pretty much any time you offer an exclusive feed, you're going to either have to upload a separate one to your RSS feed. You're going to have to go to Patreon and go through a closed link. So this isn't totally new, but for anybody who hasn't done subscriptions, there is extra legwork when it comes to this sort of thing. And then the biggest con to me about Apple Podcasts versus, say, a Patreon or any other subscription site is the subscription is through Apple. So it's really easy for someone to sign up. Again, that's the benefit. People are used to going in, doing Apple Pay and connecting to a new subscription. But because it goes through Apple, you're not getting the customer's name, you're not getting their email, you're not getting their contact information. So Apple owns that relationship completely. So if you wanted to add those people to an email list, if you wanted to send a thank you email, if you wanted to send a physical merch item, you have no way of knowing who that is unless they send you a message and tell you they subscribed. So you can see the number of subscribers, any information about them you don't have access to, which to me, when I'm thinking about retaining a listener or I'm thinking about building a relationship, that's obviously throws a wrench in everything. So another thing to consider. And then just one more thing. Apple Podcasts, again, when you're considering doing this, is Apple Podcasts does have a good portion of the podcasting market, but they are becoming the minority compared to Spotify. Spotify is really, with Joe Rogan, with a lot of the moves that they've been making, this year is the first time that Spotify has crossed Apple Podcasts in the amount of people listening to shows on their platform. Spotify has 28.2 million people that are listening to podcasts in the U.S. Spotify has 28.2 million people that are listening to podcasts in the U.S. versus Apple Podcasts has 28 million. So they made a pretty big jump when it comes to listenership. So again, you've got a lot of people to work with. The pros are obviously the ease of getting someone to click subscribe on a native app they already have on their phone versus going to a third-party site like Patreon is immense. But it is a pay-to-play thing. It is a good chunk of revenue taken out of your pocket, and it doesn't give you any access to customer information. Again, the reason I going back to the beginning, the reason I say sure is it doesn't hurt, I don't think, to set up another stream of income. I'll probably sign up for it and set it up as a separate platform just so I have the option. Might as well have the funnel open. But my primary push when I do ad reads, when I do any kind of push people to do stuff, I'm going to send them somewhere like Patreon that's trackable, that's going to take a smaller bite, I'm going to leave the Apple Podcast subscription there as kind of a discovery thing. I may push it right in the beginning with a bonus episode or something, but it won't be the thing that I direct most of my listeners to. But that's essentially the breakdown. I try to keep it quick and clean, but is there any questions, anything that I didn't answer, or any thoughts before we move into kind of the meet and greet side? Because I definitely don't want to take up the rest of the time for Joanna and the rest of you that are getting ready to do this.